Today we are talking about digital accessibility and various aspects under that umbrella, such as wearables, mobiles, and smart homes, and how it's impacting human in a good or a bad way. I am Chandrama Malik, a PhD student under Dr. Richa Gupta in HCD department, and today with me I am having Riya Mehra and Ashwin Verma. So starting with smart homes and wearables, I have a question for you guys. That do you think that they truly actually helping the human, or it's replacing the human, the roles of human in our day-to-day life, or even that can be based on infrastructure, technology, or any corporate setups?
Yeah, that's a good topic, Chandrama. I would say that it's a broad umbrella, like you mentioned, and one cannot really talk about replacing humans, especially when the tech is solving some of the big automation problems that humans face in their day to day. But yes, there are some other latent needs that are coming that are increasing their dependence on, say, updates and adapting to the technology in wherever context they take it to. For example, smart homes and phones are having certain dependencies with social medias and even AI dependencies that we are seeing. But nonetheless, I would let Ashwin comment on that as well. I think the dependency part can also be a different aspect rather than human needs.
For sure, there are some jobs that AI-enabled technology can do much better than human, and there are things that are being automated by artificial intelligence that was being done by human. But I think at the end of the day, major AI products are being designed to help humans rather than replacing them. So I think nobody knows what's going to happen, but I think a lot of automated jobs, a lot of repetitive jobs can be in danger. But I don't think AI can completely replace a human or a human intervention.
Also, like from this point I can remember, like back in 1980s when computer was invented, it was also a threat at that time that it will be replacing. But what we can see, it's now an accessibility. Actually it's helping, it's an inclusion, like it's including everybody in irrespective of their, like it can be like temporary or permanent disabilities. But however, I have just one question in my mind as well, like do you think that this kind of aspect should be the role of the technology, how they should adapt to the human, so that it's not actually replacing, but yeah, it's also helping, that as you said, that it's depending on how it's like complementing each other.
Yes, and I think this comes to a niche topic about creating a balance between user initiated versus system automated. And I think I read literature recently on how balance between these two is very important, and how certain technologies sometimes often affect relaxation, positivity, and accessibility to some points. That they had to do a study with people understanding what is their ideal user experience and what factors do even come into mind when they are interacting with technology. So I think when you say tech dependence or balance between automation and usability, I think flexibility for technology is very important, which was also something that the research devalued. And also how users value aesthetics and the ability to contextually control technologies. So I think these are some of the ways that we can research more on to understand how a user should adapt versus how a technology should already be adapted to that user.
Yeah, so do you have some points to add to that?
Actually, complete automation by technology, like humans should not initiate any action. Technology can on its own understand what I intend to do as a user. There is an entire domain of development called ubiquitous computing that is there. Like when I go to washroom, I don't need to clap my hands, I don't need to turn on the light bulb or whatever. Lights on their own, like turn on themselves.
Exactly,
So
yeah.
there is entire domain about it, ubiquitous computing. But yeah, the question is how ubiquitous can we get? Like how automated can the technology be before it becomes like it hinders the user experience? Because our end goal as user experience researcher or UI designers is just to increase the experience, make the user experience better.
Yeah.
So I think that's a question, like how ubiquitous can the technology get before it start hindering the usability?
So like to that question, a counter question came to my mind, that how smart should be smart enough. So, firstly, I just have this basic question, that do you think that this aspect only depends or only is available to those people who are having a good income or internet access, or like resourcefully they're rich, not like it's especially in countries like India, developing economies. So there can be many people, like as you guys are researchers, I have heard that you are working for blind people, that how do you think that this can be only for, that can be also impacting those kind of sections of the society who are still now devoid of these technologies?
Yes, I think, like Ashwin said, how ubiquitous can it be? So ubiquity means that it includes everyone, it includes objects that you see every day. Who should it include? But there is a flip side to this when technologies are actually in the market, and me being someone with industry experience, I know that in order to deploy technologies, you need to cater to certain users, and you need to understand certain demands in certain markets. That is just the business side of things. What we need right now is to include end users in co-creation technologies. So designing for versus designing with, the end user kind of ensures that this technology either does or doesn't cater to this, and what can we do to understand how it could better do that, right? And I guess, what was your question earlier?
So I mean, that's what I just wanted to ask.
Yeah.
Like countries like India, for
Yeah.
example, if we take the people with visual impairment,
Yes.
how do you think, like, is it actually reaching to them, or it's just like it's like limited to we like people? Yeah, if you understand it.
Yeah, of course. I think, like Ashwin mentioned about AI being so accessible right now, and I think we were talking about how smartphones are very accessible nowadays, even like low pay ones. So I think definitely there are some aspects of technology that are really ubiquitous, but the core principle that people should actually understand is involving them early on.
Exactly.
So do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, for sure. Like as designers or as researchers and as students, our job is to design for everyone. But when we look at from the perspective of a company that's trying to earn money from the product, they would for sure want to earn like for every amount of effort that they put into the product, they would try to earn as much as possible. That's why it's obvious that they would try to target the upper echelon of the society economically. So, but on the other hand, we see that operating systems like Android Go and several other light operating systems are entirely developed, open sourced, and everything, and they are designed specially for lower end smartphones.
Yeah.
So, work is being done, but yeah, obviously we can do better at that front also.
Also, he was mentioning earlier that there can be like Gemini is also one of the feature which can
Gemini
be used.
can look, not Gemini. I think Gemini cannot be used in Android Go now that I remember. But ChatGPT you can download, you can use it. You can use any normal application. There are some applications are obviously not. The user cannot use some application in Android Go that is available on lower end smartphones. But the thing is, work is being done in that domain also. Like companies also are putting effort in that.
Yeah, actually from ChatGPT I remembered like few months back also I used to like use it only on my laptop, but currently I think it's very much that can be used as an app on phone. But I mean few months back also it was a problem to be using because not all people will have access to laptops, right? So especially when I researched with blind people, what I saw that they are mostly using smartphones or screen readers, but not much like well equipped with laptops. So I think that's a good point you mentioned. Also, like all these points are taking me towards the standard accessibility guidelines. Like, do you have something to add on that? Like, how should the guidelines be designed? Like, based on what aspects, so that it can be actually inclusive for everyone.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and it's a pretty niche area right now in web accessibility versus emerging technology accessibility. Recent literature points that for web accessibility, we do have certain guidelines that were revised, like WCAG 1.2, WCAG 2.2, and I think it adheres to web, but to transfer that to suppose VR or immersive technologies, AI, all these other kinds of emerging technologies have to rely on user-centered approaches, especially when they are designing or when they are kind of employing users as participants rather than co-creators, which again brings us to the point that involving users early. So understanding why accessibility matters, why do we need to have boundaries, which extreme cases does this product cater to? I think that research is important to have a cogent, accessible guidelines for a particular class of technologies, which is shifting from web. Like you said, like you can use apps now, right?
Yeah.
You don't need iPads, you don't need laptops.
Exactly, yeah.
Disparate devices across multiple contexts. It sounds broad, and it is, but I guess particular class of technologies like immersive technologies need their own standards. And that recent research is exploring, but standardization, we are far from now.
Actually, just one point came to my mind, that there is a good saying, like, if your design is good, it can be useful to one, that should be for all. I mean,
Yeah.
you should not design thinking for all, but for one. Then only it can be inclusive, truly
I think so
inclusive.
too. I think
But
so.
also the guidelines, like another question for you, counter question came to my mind, like again keeping the setup of a developing country, not only India, we can take it from like anywhere part of the world. Do you think that how much these guidelines are being implemented actually for, because this is my qualitative understanding that generally people do complain that there are guidelines just for the sake of guidelines, but it's not actually implemented, neither in terms of websites nor in terms of like gadgets, and I'm just not even putting into the physical accessibility part, even for digital accessibility parts or gadgets or apps also, it's not completely implemented. So
Before answering what you asked, I'd like to add one more thing. I'm not very sure about it, but I think all these guidelines like WCAG and all the other guidelines were developed for web first, like web first interfaces. The thing is, 10 years back, it was very expensive for a company to let's suppose ChatGPT itself. If it was 10 years back, if it was a company like 10 years back, it was 10-20 years back. It was very difficult. It was very expensive for the company to create an application for web, create a web application, create an application for Android, create a web application for iOS, then for Windows, like a native Windows application. So they would have to have 4 code bases, different team hiring, and a lot of things. But today itself, when we look at the domain, we see that there are a lot of frameworks are there, like React Native, Flutter, that makes easier for the company to develop develop the app for multiple platforms. So what is happening because of this is even smaller companies and smaller applications can develop smaller companies can develop application for multiple platforms. They can have web application, they can have an application of iOS or Mac OS. So I think that the requirement to improve this accessibility guidelines is very high, since it is very common for even a small startup to have an application for all the platforms. First things that, and second your question.
yeah, my question was that, like, I just want to give an example to make the question more clear. Currently, as we are in the country India, if you have heard about IRCTC app, so it was not even accessible for people like us. So I'm just not even commenting about the people with disabilities. Okay, so that's my point is, like, there are guidelines, but it is not actually implemented, and taking the scenario of developing countries, I mean, what do you think, like, if it's not implemented, and how much at this point, like in 2026, if you see the scenario, like, what do you think, is it implemented or is it improved or it is on the way? Because it's also illegal, if you know that it should be implemented.
Supreme
Otherwise
Court also recently
Exactly.
gave
Yeah,
a
yeah.
guideline कि it is compulsory.
Exactly.
It is under right to, I think, some Supreme Court quoted.
RPWD,
Yeah.
For PWD, it is a right to life or something like right to quality
Yeah.
of life. Something I don't
Yeah.
remember the exact verdict, but
Yeah.
Supreme Court commented on it. So I think work is being done. We are on progress. A lot of things can improve.
One challenge that I would like to point out that recent literature points to as well is that these accessibility guidelines, whatever for web or for other applications, was being targeted as end applications. not for the developers who actually implement them. So I think there's a middle stakeholder as well, which is why stakeholder mapping in any design problem is very important, in any policy problem is very important. Who is involved in this particular policy decision? So I think the middle developers who actually implement and read the requirements are not able to understand them properly.
Exactly, yeah.
I think that is also a stakeholder gap, that policymakers and not only them but designers and users have to come together to understand and to solve. But
also, like, to your point, I want to add, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that I was reading, and also as we are researchers, our job is always to create some guidelines, like for any kind of problems. So however we are working for accessibility, but people who are working especially for digital accessibility domain, I believe it's also the researchers' job to revamp these guidelines so that it will actually feed the developers and both the users, so that there should not be any gap, right? I mean, as you said, that developers are not able to completely understand. So there should, I mean, that gap can be like eradicated if.
I think definitely with accurate research solving the right problems, I think definitely it can be eradicated.
Yeah.
I think there is like from an engineer's perspective, a computer science student does not know much about accessibility. He does not study much about accessibility.
Exactly, yeah.
And a designer does not, like say a UI UX designer, most know, but a lot of designer does not know about tech thing. So a very common problem that is available on, like say, I'm giving an example of on a website, HTML tags are not in the viewing page. They are outside that, and the user press tap. It's outside the website. It's not in the website. It's moving outside. So it is a very common accessibility mistake. Developer doesn't know design, developer doesn't know about accessibility, and the designer doesn't know about tech. He cannot tell the designer that you have to keep the HTML tags here and here, and the designer and the developer does not know much about accessibility. He gets a design, he gets a Figma design, he just codes it up and send it to the senior designer. So that's also a problem, I think.
I mean, there is a gap in
I
between.
think a language accessibility between teams, between roles is being missed. I think there is I wouldn't say a communication gap, but I think translating something in the other person's language is also kind of accessibility, because language is the most important way to communicate.
Exactly.
So I think that is where the twist comes.
So also, like, I would like to add a point, like when it comes to accessibility, as we are talking a lot about accessibility based on websites, gadgets, and a lot of stuff. So accessibility is not only for like people with disabilities, it can be for everyone, right? So I mean, I just want to add some points for, especially for older people. So while accessing these gadgets, it's also it's also comes the point of accessibility because they are not well versed with the new technologies. So I mean, how can, for example, in a Indian household where there are also like people of different ages in a single place, so how do you think that a single gadget can actually feed both of them together? Like a person with such a age gap, like older people and also like the younger, the next generations.
I think that's kind of the simplicity in design that we normally achieve, but it's kind of difficult because there's a bubble of information that you have to get into a product or in an app or in a gadget or something that is accessible to other people. And that simplicity, the goal simplicity kind of goes away, which is why I feel like I've seen my grandparents and they still have trouble using any of the gadgets.
Exactly, yeah.
And when they made the switch from Android to iOS, they had a much easier time because iOS targets that. iOS targets simplicity. In some ways, it's not a total reform from those keypad phones, which everyone is used to. But then there's always a time for radical innovation, and that was that. So they do have an easier time with it, but then again, you have to have that goal in mind that, okay, this is going to be simple, and I'm going to talk to users about it.
Also, like, adding to that, I would say that it also depends. Like, as you said, with for your grandparents' case, like for mine, I have seen that they are still sticking to that keypad phone because there is no assistant to him to help him with that. So, I mean, can you, just say on this thing, like, even if some, like, in India, there are many people with age are living alone, so how they can adapt to these new technologies if they have no assistant, like external assistant, I mean?
Firstly, from the designer's perspective or the developer's perspective, like the task that a designer should and are told to have in mind is not designing for let's say 30th to 60th percentile of the population, like mean of the population, rather than that designing for 10th to 90th percentile or 5th to 95th percentile.
Exactly.
Like
Yeah.
for the extremes, designing for the extremes.
Yeah.
So while designing a system, there are some things that need to be overlooked. Obviously, you cannot create an perfect system.
Yeah.
Every system has some shortcomings.
Yeah.
But we need to make this thing, like designing for the extreme, the core, that this cannot be missed. So that's one thing. Second, I think it's a designer's responsibility that a smartphone, let's say you give an example, someone like me who's a heavy user of smartphone, I like to tweak everything in my smartphone. That's why I love Android.
Yeah.
It gives me full access to my operating system. I can change whatever. Actually, even compared to Android, I like custom ROMs because I get full access of my phone. I root my phone.
Yeah.
On the other hand, there's someone like my grandparent who would love to use a phone as simple as who would love to keep the phone as simple as possible.
Yeah.
Designing for both of them can be a difficult task, but
Exactly,
that's the
yeah.
job of a designer.
Also, like as I said, that there can't be a presence of external assistant always to help them. So in that cases, that should be kept in mind, that how this accessibility problems can be solved even for every age groups. Because as we were proceeding with the discussion, it's not only limited, as I said, for one, but for all, as I state this statement at the starting.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I also like to know a lot of things, I mean, other aspects from you, if you can share. Like, what should be the responsibility of the designer who are, I mean, especially the accessibility designer, in terms when they are designing these products for the users, because they are well versed, as Ashwin said, that being an engineering student, they might not be well versed with the term even accessibility or even the guidelines or what should be or what should not be. But as you also said, that developer and users can have some gaps in between. But I think that an accessibility designer, where their role comes into, right? So what do you think that should, I mean, I think according to me, the first word which comes into my mind is empathy. So I mean, would you like to add something?
Yeah, I think empathy is the overarching role of every designer.
Yeah,
or
obviously.
it should be. Right.
But it's very
Accessibility-
essential for accessibility,
Yes.
obviously.
For access, like getting access to anything, you need to understand the domain.
Yeah.
You need to understand who you're working with, who you're working for, what is going to result from it, and how can you mediate that with particular respect given to researchers, policymakers, other stakeholders, developers. And in this web of, that's why sometimes it refers to as a web of accessibility,
Yeah.
right? So in this web, multiple people are involved, multiple artifacts are involved, and as an accessibility first designer, you have to kind of mediate sometimes, and you have to understand, again, the simplicity goal comes into mind, that I will communicate this in the most simplest of forms. Doesn't matter if this guideline is formulated by someone else, how do I translate it?
Yeah.
So I think translating and mediating with keeping everyone in mind is how an accessibility designer should function.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that is my take.
Especially in a country like India, which is actually interesting to see that there are various people. I mean, there is actually a vast diversity in terms of population, in terms of every aspect. But it's still unfortunate to see that, I mean, there is this big gap in this. Like, as you said, I mean, there are guidelines, but who are actually implementing it? So, but if that is actually a thing which can be taken into action in a country like India, I think it has a great scope in
I
the
think so too.
umbrella of accessibility and digital accessibility.
And I think, like, from the onset of AI, it's making a lot of things more accessible. Like, leave LLMs, leave large generative models, leave them aside for a chance, and look 10 years back. Google Translate used to be so bad 20 years back. Even English to Hindi, it was really bad.
Yeah.
And today, you cannot tell that whether it was translated by a human or being UPSC translates it, translate their paper via Google Translate. It's so good these days, and not for one language, almost every language. This is also an NLP task. This is also ML task, but there are some things that are not appreciated or hyped that much. Like as I said, translate models. It's a very difficult task in NLP, but it was not hyped as much. Generative models like GPT were hyped very, 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 very much compared to these models. But the impact that translative models have was also very huge, and they also closed a huge gap in accessibility. From the company's perspective, think when a company is designing an operating system, they keep the primary language English because most of the people speak English. They want to earn money. Generative models like translating models like Google Translate uses allow them to translate their OS or their system to every language without spending money. This is, I think, the core that we need. We need to the technologies. We need new models, new research in the field of AI that can help us bridge this gap in accessibility.
Yeah, I mean, there comes AI, I think, in this also discussion. So, as you were talking a lot about even GPT, Gemini, a lot of stuff. So, what do you think, like, is it now easier to access stuff because of this AI models or chatbots? Also, I would like to specifically ask to you, Ashwin, because you are also working in this domain of making talk dial, if I'm not wrong, in which you are adding audio to the smartphones where they can access audio to any of the educational material. So as far as I know, it's offline, right? But if you know that many participants have, especially the blind participants, have suggested that there should be AI, inclusion of AI. So what do you think? I mean, what is your take on that?
Now that I think about it, surfing web for a blind user, for let's say your grandparents, is very difficult. It's not difficult for us. For them, you have to scroll down, you have to look at the web pages, you have to read their headings, you have to understand what this price is trying to say, whether I want to see it or not. There are tens of decisions that you need to make before going to a website. Now think the number of decisions that they have to make when they are using ChatGPT for the same task. Let's say they want to study history of Delhi Sultanate's history. If they wanna do it the classical way, go to web, first decision, search they need to decide what the keywords should be. Then they need to decide on which website they need to go. Then they need to decide which section of the website they should read. When they are using an LLM like ChatGPT, they need to type the prompt. The language can be also very different. The consequences of using wrong language on Google search and on ChatGPT are very different. Like ChatGPT can also comprehend if you tweak the language a little bit. So the number of decisions that the user need to make are reduced very, very, very much when using ChatGPT. So it also bridged a big accessibility gap, whether we are discussing it or not, or seeing it or not. Second thing, for the blind people, as I said, for them, if there is a page of NCERT and they want to understand, like they are not able to understand what this paragraph is about, what this paragraph is trying to say, they would have to, if they are not using GPT, they would have to copy the paragraph, search it on web, look for YouTube videos or whatever, and then they would get the transcript, or then they would hear it or whatever. But now they can just use it as a prompt on GPT and say explain it. So it reduces the accessibility gap very, very, very much.
Also, like as you said that even now, as you know, there is voice prompts. They don't even have to type anything.
They don't even have to type.
I think the modality is also different. Plus, I think there's a way that what I'm seeing and what I think is happening, that sometimes when Google was new, right, it was kind of new to kind of search things and get results like really quick, and not having to go through books and PDFs or whatever. I think ChatGPT is heading towards that as well, that generalization, that you can type anything, any keyword in any language, in even like other modalities, and I think you would get a better snapshot of what you're trying, because I have used that many times for summaries and everything. So I think that's a really good tool for anyone.
You can use English rather than like pure typing pure English. You can use English. GPT is very forgiving with prompts. You cannot. I don't know whether Google search, how good Google search works with English prompts. Like if I search something in English, it corrects itself. So the fact that I have never used English on Google and have used English on ChatGPT,
yeah.
this speaks in itself.
Also, like, I don't know, I am using Gemini on my Google, so it autocorrects for me, but again, it's for Gemini, I guess. It's not for Google, because Gemini is automatically translating my
Now they're
errors.
integrating Gemini into normal.
Yeah, that's why. So I think I can conclude that AI is actually a necessary evil, because it's a hot topic for many people, for engineers, for developers. It's taking their jobs, but when it comes to accessibility, topic, it's like, okay, it's actually helping those people, because that's a feedback we get whenever we go to field study with blind people, especially. They used to tell us that please involve AI keys, if you can also remember. So I think it's a very important tool for them, but on the other hand, there is still a discussion which is not anywhere part of our topic today, that how is AI taking the jobs. That's a complete other day we can talk about. So with this, we are closing our today's discussion, which was really interesting. It gone various aspects of, from smart gadgets to finally to AI actually, and we also discussed about various kinds of users. To know more about digital accessibility, please feel free to use NPTEL course by Dr. Richa Gupta. Thank you so much.